Happy day and greetings to everyone involved. I am Jared Johnson, the Jared J. Joining me for today's topic is my friend, producing partner, Kansas City Chiefs fan, Chris Black. And to his immediate left, my friend and recurring guest of the show, Talmadge Roger Bernardo the third. All right, so we're going to talk about today our work history. And the reason I want to talk about this, and I don't know if you guys have noticed this or if you had the same experience, but I meet a lot of people who, when they get to like retirement age, seem like they've just...
We're old. I think he's saying we're old. Yeah.
I wish I was retired right now. Actually, I love where I work now, and we'll get to that. But I meet a lot of people, really wherever they are in their life. Most people, I would say, that I meet tolerate their job at best. I meet a lot of people that just don't like what they do. You meet a lot of people that are even retirement age that say, well, I did this, but what I really wanted to do was, and it'll be something totally different. I feel like most of us accept what life hands us, and we don't really pursue what we want the most for whatever myriad of reasons. So all three of us, I don't know why I said both, there's clearly three of us sitting here. All of us have worked
I get overlooked all the
more
time.
than one. I'm the shortest one. I should get overlooked, really. But
well, we do overlook.
all of us have worked different places. We'll get to this in a moment too, but Talmadge and I actually met working together at a job. So let's jump right in. First question for both of you. As far back as you can remember, what was your answer when someone would ask you, what do you want to be when you grow up?
As far back as I can remember. That's always been a strange question for me because I never knew. Now, early on, I'm like every kid. I wanted to be a fireman or play baseball.
Okay.
Or a fireman and play football. Or a fireman and play basketball.
So fireman was the constant.
So in the 70s, if you want to be a fireman or play sports, and by the way, this is not a profession, but you ever notice how all 6-year-olds know Kung Fu or karate?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And you never went to one class.
If you ever see a martial arts movie, you think you got some nunchucks that you need to get out. Yeah.
It's along that same line of, but seriously, as I grew older, if I had to say, early on I thought lawyer or I thought commentator, a sports commentator.
Okay.
You've done good at that.
And then I thought
you have
about...
a lot to say.
What are you trying to say?
Hey, you got a lot to say.
So I would go lawyer, sports commentator, or sports agent were the three.
Would you say this was like going into college age?
Yeah.
Or? Okay.
Late high school, early college years, that was my thought.
Interesting.
I'm glad I chose to do none of them now. I'd be bored of tears.
You think so?
Yeah. Because when I went to college, initially, liberal arts degree, which I never should have. Don't do that if you go to college because you can't get a job.
Take notes now.
But radio, television, and film was my major.
Yeah.
And I knew one semester in, I don't want to do this. Had I not, and I tell people all the time, sometimes college is, because everybody thinks of college as is to show you what you want to do, teach you what you want to do, get your certification, do what you want to do. That's true. But sometimes college shows you what you don't want to be.
Sometimes you find out what you want to do by learning what you don't want to do.
And had I not gone to college, I'm still sitting here thinking I should have chased that sports commentator dream. But 1 year into it, not that I lost interest, but and not that I was afraid of competition either, but I guess when I saw all it took and all the luck it would take, and again, maybe it sounds like I was fearful of competition, but I was just like, the real money jobs and the more likely jobs in the radio, television, and film industry are technical writing, believe it or not. Writing directions on how to use equipment, things of that nature, more than even the commentating or the front of the camera kind of stuff. Now, if you make it big there, obviously you're talking 6+ figures. But
if you become a Rich Eisen or a Chris Berman or somebody like that, yeah.
So and then any of those.
And then you're talking
not yet.
And then you're talking seven figures. And also keep in mind this is well before the internet. See, had the internet
that's
been around,
also true.
then,
We live in a different world now.
I might have said I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to do it myself. I launch a channel like this, get my name out there, get my voice out there, and somebody will find me and see me. So long-winded way of answering. Early on, just the generic stuff all kids go through.
Kung Fu Master, firefighter, NBA, whatever. Yeah.
And I was 3'2" with a limp. How am I going to be in the NBA? But you don't know that as a kid.
I mean,
And-
yeah, all you know is
it's like,
that's fun, isn't
I
it?
want to do it, and I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna make lots and lots of money and buy my mommy a house. But anyway, well, at least that's what black kids think. But so I was. But as I got
that
older,
true?
the other two.
That was never a thought.
Okay, interesting. I didn't know. The sports commentator definitely doesn't surprise me. The lawyer in the sports age, I never had heard. I really had never heard you say any of those three. But okay, interesting. Chris, what about yourself?
You know,
Kung Fu master, and then what else?
I was a kung fu master. I was gonna grow out the beard real long. No,
You could still
honestly, yeah, I could still do that.
Not that long.
Not that long.
I mean, you could.
It doesn't grow like that. I don't. To be honest with you, I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up.
And I think
to
that's
be
probably a
completely
lot of
honest,
people. Yeah.
I don't. I tried on more areas of study. I couldn't think of a major that I wanted to do in college. I was a rudderless ship
Yeah.
in college because
Okay.
I didn't know. I was in radio, television, film as well, and I really loved it. And honestly, that's kind of why we're in this position now because
Yeah.
I never stopped loving it. I just had a real bad experience. I was young and I was dumb in the sense that I wanted to play a lot of ball. I played basketball in city leagues. I played softball in city leagues, and I enjoyed the athletic side of things when I was in my early 20s, doing whatever I wanted. And I had a bad experience with a producer at a community television network in Irving. And this is really petty, that he wanted me to tell him every Tuesday that I couldn't work the following Tuesday. And that was just too much for me. And he drove me nuts.
So he would
And
make a big deal.
he-
Not that he would build it into your schedule, knowing ahead of time. He was like, you had to tell me every week.
And that just became too much. And I some of the things that I saw in there is I never felt like, oh, well, I don't want to be a camera guy doing this. I don't want to be a camera guy doing that. But I never thought about what we have today, doing a podcast or trying to do movies like we're trying to do. That never entered my mind, in which I
Okay.
wish if I had thought about it, it would be something that I would, that's what we're trying to do.
Right. Flash forward to now. Yeah.
Flash forward to now. I never lost the love for editing and all that stuff. But when I was in high school, I had no clue. No clue. My degree was kinesiology when I bailed out of radio, television, film. And I actually got married my senior year and walked away from college. So I don't even have a degree. Now, I will say this is funny. You guys are going to find this humorous because of who I was bashing earlier, 2 segments ago. I found a sheet of paper. My mom, I don't know, like your parents, may have kept everything you did in elementary school in some cedar chest, right? So I find this sheet of paper when I was like learning how to write, first grade, kindergarten, whatever it was, I don't remember. It said, when I grow up, and I can't believe I wrote this, and this is amazing to me, I wanted to be quarterback of the New York Giants.
Why the Giants?
Specifically, I was about to say, specifically the
No
Giants.
idea. No idea. That's where I was bashing them as an organization earlier. And I'm like,
Wow.
yeah, what the crap was going on there? Heck, I don't know.
I guess you thought you were better than Fran Tarkington.
I guess I could run faster than Fran Tarkenton did. Had a ball of energy back then. So yeah, I mean that I just found was humorous.
Yeah.
But as far as like through high school, I had no idea. I wanted to play basketball. I played through high school and played varsity, but I sat at the bench and threw the towel like that and passed water down the bench. I was Bill Winnington. That's all I was. I didn't play much.
ML
So,
Carr.
yeah, there was just not an opportunity for me to go any further than that.
Okay.
So really, so radio, television, film was probably the thing to do, and here we are trying to do it.
Right.
20, 30 some odd years later.
Years later,
Well,
yeah.
I want to amend my answer though. Not Kung Fu Master at 6 years old. I forgot about astronaut. We all wanted to do that too.
There's
Well, of
that.
course,
Yeah,
Don't
who
forget
doesn't want to
astronaut.
explore?
Or cowboy.
Cowboy, a Dallas Cowboy.
Well, no, just a cowboy.
Now, when I was like young child, the first answer I remember giving, and it's ironic now, my answer was I want to be one of the Three Stooges. That was my honest answer when I was a little kid.
I could see that.
Oh, well, I've kind of grown up to be my own students, but
we're not shocked at all. I don't understand
No.
where the irony comes
Yeah.
in.
well, here's the irony. Here's the irony. As a young child, I said that strictly because I saw these three guys and I was like, they just look like they're having fun. That's fun. That's what I want to be when I grow up. I didn't understand what being an actor was, what being on
Gotcha,
television.
gotcha.
So the ironic part is, fast forward 20-ish years, I start pursuing an acting career. I didn't know when I was 5 that's basically what I was saying.
Yeah.
I just thought these guys are having fun.
Yeah, they're having fun.
That's what I want to be when I grow up. Yeah. So that was my whole, so that's why it's ironic.
yeah.
And some of you don't know who the Three Stooges are, look it up.
Do a little research.
Little Google.
And then in high school, I was the same as you, Chris. There was nothing that I was interested in really doing. My whole thought too, because I didn't go to a 4-year college. I went to a 2-year electronics school and got a degree that I've never used. But I was like, I don't want to go to a 4-year school, spend all that time and money when I don't know what I want to do.
Yeah.
I'm very analytical, and I just couldn't wrap my mind around why am I going to do that if it's not going to do me good long term. I just didn't see the point in
I
it.
wish more people thought that way now, because so many people go into debt
Yeah.
because they feel like I felt. I felt like college was the 13th grade. That's literally what I thought.
That's what
was-
society gears most of us to
yeah,
think, in my
It
opinion.
wasn't like I want to go here so I can do this. It's like, well, this is just the logical next step. Boom,
Here's
I'll
what I'm
go.
doing now.
Yeah,
I just
and-
finished the 12th grade. Now I'm going into 13th.
And I wasted so much time in college, wasted majors, wasted classes, wasted time, wasted money because I had no clue. Once I figured out it wasn't radio, television, and film, I'm like, well, that's great, but now what?
But
Yeah.
now
But I
what?
got to still keep going to class.
And see, my
You
senior
gotta keep-
year,
Yeah.
my senior year of high school, I told people if there was something I definitively knew that I really wanted, then yes, I'd be applying to colleges. But because there's not one thing that I'm dead set passionate on, I'm not. I told all my friends, y'all go places and good. I don't know for sure. I'm not doing that. And go forward several years. Some people are like, well, why didn't you right out of high school start pursuing the acting career? That had never crossed my mind at that time. So looking back, was some of the foundation there? Yes. I didn't know that. So yeah, coming out of high school, I was like, I'm just not doing all of that. I'm not going into debt. I'm not going into a 4-year and spending all that time when I really don't have something that I want to achieve.
Yeah.
So looking back now too, and I don't even know the answers to these questions. What did your dad do for a living when you were growing up? Because most of us as kids, that's the first example of what we find out what a job is, right?
Right.
What does our dad do? That's what we know.
Well,
So
you wanna
what
take
was?
this one, or?
You go ahead, Chris, unless you want to.
My dad had one job. That was as far when I was a kid till the time he retired. He worked for the EPA as an environmental engineer. So
Oh, okay.
that was.
And I've met your dad, but I did not know that.
yeah,
Okay.
he was an environmental engineer.
Interesting. Okay. Talmadge, what about you?
Well, he's had the same job, but the first memory I have, I believe he was a captain in the Army. And then by the time he retired, he was colonel. He retired as Colonel Military Intelligence.
I knew he was in the Army. I didn't know he was a colonel. Wow.
Very
That's
cool.
Talmadge Roger Varnado Jr., if we're tracking.
He
Right?
doesn't call himself that, but
Yeah.
He didn't refer to himself in the third person.
sometimes.
Okay. But you're the third, so you're really the third person.
It's getting confusing now.
Where's Kenneth Walker the third and Montgomery Theopolis the third?
Where is he?
I'm going to have to get back in touch with him, honostly. It's been a little while since
You
I've
look
seen
kind of
him.
like him.
We do have a similarity about us.
Some with glasses.
Something, yeah, and the hair's gelled.
Yeah.
We're not really twins, but we sort of are.
I got you.
My dad also, it's ironic, all three of our dads did the same thing
Yeah.
for durations. My dad worked in an aluminum factory for 30 years. And y'all heard me talk about how small my hometown is. I grew up in a place with less than 2,000 people, but there's actually some really good jobs there. There's some really good industries, some factories. And so my dad worked at an aluminum factory. Years later, I worked at a different aluminum factory, but in the same hometown. But I watched him for 30 years. That was what he did. He went to work, he came home, that was where he worked. I didn't know a lot about his job till I started getting older. I just knew the name of the place where he worked. And that was kind of my first perception of what somebody did. And like all of us, I remember the first pastor of the church when I was a young kid. I remember the children's minister, the youth minister, the music minister.
Yeah.
We all had school teachers. So I knew like other adults had different jobs, but the main thing I knew about, my dad works at this aluminum factory. I didn't know what in the heck he did there until I got older and he would talk more about it. I just knew where he went to work.
No worries about not knowing exactly what he did when he went to work. All I knew was my dad was an Army man.
Yeah, right.
Like when you're 7, what you did? He's an Army man. That's all I knew.
And all of us like playing
one
with
of
those
those
little
little
army
green guys.
figures.
Extended
Yeah,
little green guys.
our brains both went there.
That's what I thought.
My dad's a grown-up version of this little army figure. Some of our
Army
audience don't
man,
know what
yeah,
those are.
that's it.
Probably.
I know what he did, but
Heard
he
of
was
G.I.
Army man.
Joe.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what would you say that you learned the most from seeing your dad's approach to his job?
For my father, especially military-wise, just discipline and the fact that he went to work every day. I'm sure my dad was sick. I'm not trying to imply that he never got sick or anything.
He wasn't like David Dunn from Unbreakable.
Pretty much. No, not like that at all. And plus, since he was stationed different places, I didn't live with him.
That's a good point too. Actually.
all the time.
Yeah.
But in the years that I did, I literally can't remember him missing a day of work because he was sick. Now, again, I'm sure he did, but
Right,
I
your
didn't
perception,
see it, and I don't
yeah.
remember it. So the biggest thing I pulled is you go to work every day. Now I haven't lived up to that, but that's the first
The
thing.
foundation was laid.
Yeah, that's where that first thing that stood out to me is if it's Monday, he's at work. There's no day off. There's no I got sick. You suit up and you go.
Okay. Chris, what about you?
You know, I'd have to echo that. His dad did a lot of it. No, I'm kidding. No, my dad was very much like that. It just, and I think that's a generation, and especially we're kids.
Right.
You know, our perception of time, for instance, is oh my gosh, a single day seems like it's forever,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Whereas
Yes.
adults now we're like going, boy, it's 8 hours.
There's not enough
9
time
days."
in the day.
But
Yeah.
I'm very much like Talmadge. I remember my dad getting up and going to work. You had a work ethic. You got up, you went to work. You didn't. I don't remember Dad taking time off. I really don't.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's granted that was. I'll just leave the number out.
More than a couple years
We're gonna
ago.
leave that number out. But my point is that's what I remember. Dad going to work.
Yeah.
And I don't remember many days that Dad was home.
I think that's mostly a generational thing because
Yeah, I believe
here's the
so.
honest answer. My answer is the same. The biggest thing I learned from my dad, well, not in life, but as far as his job, was his work ethic. He worked at that factory for 30 years. I'm like Talmadge. I don't hardly ever remember him not being at work. Well, he had scheduled days off.
Yeah.
But when he was working, he was working. Never once, and I cannot even fathom my dad sitting around the house and going, I just didn't want to go today.
Right. Yeah.
I'm going to say this, and my dad, I don't think he'd mind me saying it. He says, I've heard him say this a lot. He never liked working at that factory. He literally referred to his job as the crap house. For a whole time I can remember growing up, he'd say, well, about to go work at the crap house. Just did 12 hours at the crap house. He never let it bother him. He wasn't in a bad mood about it. It was that's what was so funny. He spoke of it as if, about to take a drink of this water, about to go to the crap house.
Matter of fact.
But that's what he called it, and that was his honest opinion. He did not like working there. He didn't care anything about it. Working in the factory brought him no pleasure. He did it to support our family, but he never missed work. He never looked for reasons not to be there. And that's what I carried into when I got to the age where I started working. Like you said, you get up and go to work. It's Monday morning, you know where your dad is. He's at work. When it's time to work, what do? You go to work. And that was one of the biggest things I learned from him. And I remember one time when I was like 18, I was working in a warehouse, and you know this because you used to work with me. To this day, I almost never miss work.
Right.
I don't risk being late. I've carried that same, what I learned from my dad. When I was 18, one day I had a fever, and I actually did miss a day of work. It does happen. As far as y'all know, I am human. Occasionally, I will get sick. So I remember I called out, and it was the first time I called out at this new job. Well, my dad, without me knowing it, after I had called out and was asleep, he calls and talks to my boss and says, "Can Jared come in tomorrow to make up for today?" My boss told me later he thought that was strange, but was like, "Sure." So then my dad reveals this to me, and I remember laying there with a fever, sweating, going, "Why did you commit me to that? I don't know if I'm going to be better by tomorrow." And now we live in a day today where everybody's scared to death of the coronavirus and every fever. But this was years ago. My dad was just like, "I want them to know that you don't miss work all the time. Like, this is not a good impression." I was like, "Dad," like I was actually a little frustrated. But the next day, I still didn't feel good. I may not have had as high a temperature, but I think I still had a fever. I was still sweating. Guess what I did? I went to work because he committed me to it. My boss ended up sending me home. I didn't ask to go home, but unlike what I normally did, I was moving slow. I wasn't talking to people much. I was like wiping my head. I was kind of dizzy. I was still not better, and that was my scheduled day off. I could have been resting that day, and so my boss was like, "You're not feeling like it. I told your dad you could come in because he asked. You're an extra person on the schedule. I don't really need you. The schedule's already made. Go home and get better, man. If you're sick, you're sick." And so I got home, and I remember my dad asking, like, "Well, why are you already home?" And my dad and I didn't argue much, but this is one time where I actually was kind of mad. I've gotten over it now. But I was like, "They sent me home, Dad, because I'm still sick." And like I kind of like was a little worked up. I was like, "Why did you do that? Why did you call and commit me to working a day when I've still probably got a fever? I'm still sweating. You put me in a situation where I had to show up and they could see I didn't need to be there and they sent me back home. What was the point of all that?" Well, I just wanted to make sure that that you get a good reputation, all this. And I was like, "I appreciate it, Dad, but like I'm sick for like I don't need to be at work." And then I almost never missed another day. So I earned my reputation. So I appreciated what he was trying to do. My dad wasn't trying to be unreasonable. He wasn't trying to make my day miserable. That's his mentality, his work ethic. And he was like, "I don't want them thinking my son who just started working there calls out from work a lot. I know how a lot of employers think. Let's make this up to him." So while I appreciate it on one level, I still remember going through that at the time being like, "Why in the world did you ask if I could come into work?" But over the years, I've realized it's because that's his mentality, that's his work ethic. So thinking back to your first job, this is like a loaded question, so I can repeat some of it if I need to. But same question for both of you. What was your first job? What did you like the most about it? What did you dislike the most about it? What did you learn the most from it? So really 4 questions. But.
Okay, mine was door-to-door newspaper subscription sales.
How old were you?
I was probably 16, 17,
Okay.
somewhere in there. Probably 16. What I liked about it, you said?
Yeah, what did you like the most about that job?
Oddly enough, the responses people would give you for why they didn't want your product. Because you're used to hearing not interested or no one answering the door. Not those, because you got a million of those a day.
Yeah.
But like one time, I was trying to sell it's the Killeen Daily Herald, and I was trying to sell a subscription to a guy, and he looked at me seriously and goes, Sonny, believe it or not, he said Sonny, I would, but I can't read.
Oh my goodness.
I probably should have been more sympathetic, but I'm trying to sell. I told him, we got pictures. He bought the subscription.
He bought it because, man, that's actually pretty impressive.
Probably because he just,
What else do I say?
What else do you say
The
to
pictures
that?
do look pretty good, Sonny. Let me see.
He bought
Well,
it.
now let me ask you this. At age 16, how many adults had you ever met that told you they didn't know how to read? Was that a little shocking?
Not really.
I don't know if I would have believed the guy. Like, I would have probably been like, "What do you mean you can't read?"
Not really, because when I was 14 or 15 in Alabama, so I had to go to a different state for this. But earlier, I was at a bank,
Hello, Alabama.
and a guy was signing his name for some deposit or something. I don't know what it was, but it was a big X because he couldn't write. Well, the guy behind him said, excuse my language, he goes, "Damn, That's my name, because he couldn't read or write either.
Oh my goodness! So you had. I'm just trying to think back.
I had seen
At that age, I don't know that I had really seen.
So I had
Wow, I'd never
seen
seen that.
it. It
No,
was hilarious.
wow.
And of course, being 14, I'm laughing.
I don't know what I would have done. I don't know how I would
And
have
he was
reacted.
dead. I mean, he was like literally like he'd stolen. You stole. That's my name, and it was an X because he was gonna do the same thing.
Neither one of them knew that. Oh my goodness. Okay.
Okay.
So I was kind of used to it.
Oh well. All right. And what did you dislike the most about that first job?
Oh, easily. Because this is my first job, so I didn't realize in sales, a good day is getting a lot of no's. Because you're geared to think the objective is to sell.
Yeah.
And I'm getting all these no's, and it's hot in Texas, and I'm walking on foot. Because they would take a big van.
Not
and
walking on sunshine.
And just drop us off in an apartment complex and turn us loose.
Oh,
And we go
okay.
door to door, and then we hit the whole complex, we get back in the van and go to another one. That's how it was. And so, obviously getting all those no's, But then as I did it, I believe that what I learned will also bleed into this. One day I wasn't selling very well, and I was frustrated. And I go in, and my sales manager says, "Yeah, how many sales do you have?" And I can't remember. I might have had one or two, but it wasn't
18 or
anything.
30.
Yeah, it wasn't anything to write home about. And he looked at me and he said, "I want you to go out tomorrow and get me as many no's as you can." I'm like, "What do you mean, get you these no's? Our job is to sell." He goes, "I'm not interested in you selling. Go out and get me as many no's as you can. I want you to write each no you get down and write the unit number. Like if it's apartment 227 told you no, 227 no, 228 no. And don't come back until you get 100 no's."
Wow.
I came back with 100 no's, but I also had 7 sales because I asked.
Yeah.
That was the lesson. To get what you want, you got to get through the no. You're going to hear a bunch of no's. When you're a young seller, you don't realize that. You take no as failure. No is a sign of, okay, he doesn't think he needs it. Now's my time to explain why
Right.
he does. Or sometimes it's just, if you got 100 no's, that means you asked 100 times. Now you can go back to your sales manager and say, "I did what you told me.
Yeah.
I asked 100 times. Now you got to teach me how to overcome these no's." But if they try to teach you how to overcome the no first, you're really
You
not
don't
geared in to listen
understand it.
anyway.
Right. The lesson
you
doesn't
don't
land.
buy it.
You're right.
But you get that's what I teach to this day, in the job I have now.
I love that
Go out and
approach.
get 100 no's. Don't come back into. That's always 100, but depending on
But
the
yeah.
volume that
Right.
we get, like if we get 50 calls a day, and I know normally they can ask 20 times roughly on average. A successful day is 20 no's. If you bring me 20 no's, it's my job to teach you how to get the yes. But if you bring me back nothing, I got nothing to teach. I got nothing to
Right.
coach. And so that's the lesson.
Well, it's like coaching a basketball player who will never take a jump shot. I can't tell you if your form isn't good or not.
If you
I don't
take
ever
a
see you
shot.
take a shot. No, I like that mentality. I like the approach of that boss by telling you, I'm not worried about you getting sales right now. Get me 100 no's and then we're going to work from there. Because we are geared, especially when we're young, but even wherever you are in life, society gears you to think no is a failure.
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't get this. You did something wrong. You failed miserably, and that's not always the case. And that's what a lot of people. I think that's lost on a lot of people, honestly. So, Chris, same question for you. First job, what'd you like? What'd you dislike? What'd you learn?
So my first job was mowing yards.
Okay.
Worked for a guy at our church. And you know what? I liked it. I enjoyed it. I was outdoors. I liked the
Now, were you in
outdoors.
high school at the
I
time?
was 17. So
Okay.
it was the summer between my junior and senior year. Mom, I guess, worked at Vacation Bible School with his wife, and he needed help. And
Yep,
my
so
mom
there
said
you
he
go.
needs a job.
So let's make this
she
work.
Out perfectly.
She dropped me off. She said, "Go knock on that door. You can go mow yards." I'm like, "Yes, ma'am." And or something to that effect, I suppose. I don't know. That was 240 some odd years ago. So yeah, I I like the most about it is you had freedom. I think of it as freedom because you just go and mow. I mean, I do enjoy it today. That I don't mow my own yard today, but someone else does. I don't have the time, but
You enjoy it, but not enough to do your own.
no, not enough. No. Well, now I'm allergic to grass and everything else. So
Now
back
that's
when I
kind of
was-
ironic.
Back when I was 17, I wasn't really, or at least it wasn't
You
known.
didn't know it, at least.
I didn't know it, but I enjoyed it. As far as disliking it, you can get tired and exhausted. It's physical labor.
Being out in that heat.
Be out in the
is
heat,
what would be
it just
exhausting,
kind of
yeah.
wears on you. But you know what? I had a good boss, and I didn't complain too much about it. I got paid, and the heat, like you said, the length of time being in the sun, that'd be it.
Yeah. What
So
would you say you learned the most from it?
perseverance.
Mm.
Just keep going. You start early in the morning. We were there starting at 6 o'clock, 6:30. You're tired, exhausted, but you got a plan. You got a number of yards that you got to get done. You got to persevere to get through it. Get up and go to work.
Yeah. Okay. And that kind of goes
It goes
along with
back to what we saw Dad do.
what did your dad do? Yeah. In Talmadge, I don't care. Get 100 no's. Like, just the perseverance ties into both of those.
Yeah.
For me, I didn't get a job till right after I graduated. I was 18. I was very involved in our youth group at our church. So my mom even told me, like, you don't really need money right now.
This is
I'd
your
rather you
job
not
right
get
here,
a job because I want you to be.
Yeah.
So every Wednesday, every Sunday, every camp, every mission trip, like, I was engrossed with that. So my first job was a summer job right after I graduated high school. And I was working for a public school, like, city bus garage. So there's a lot of guys that worked there year round, but me and some other college age guys were there as helpers. So I would do different random things, but they'd pair you up with one of the regular employees. And a couple days I was in one school helping run like computer wire through a ceiling, and I was up in the attic, and oh my goodness, it was so hot I thought I was going to pass out. It's summertime, you're up in this attic of this school. Other days I was helping do like mild construction stuff and whatever. What I liked the most, honestly, was just the feeling of I'm having my first job and I've learned what I've seen Dad do, but now I'm experiencing it. So whether I loved getting up and going to work every day, I went every day. I took it serious. I worked out in the heat. I came home tired and thirsty and sweaty. But this is what you do. This is when you have responsibilities, you just take care of them. And now I'm actually doing that. I've heard Dad's taught me this. Now I'm doing it. So that's what I liked. What I disliked, honestly, and it's been a long time ago, but I'm still not going to name names, but what I disliked really was one particular person I worked with. So I'm going to combine my questions, what I disliked and what I learned. There was one guy I worked with there that was one of the regular employees. He wasn't anybody's boss, but because I was temporary part-time, he finally had somebody he could like give orders to, basically. And this dude there's a few things that I don't have a lot of patience for, and he did two things particularly I don't have a lot of patience for. Yelled and cussed at me all the time.
Wow.
The yelling I can handle to an extent. Y'all know I don't use profanity. I don't like being cussed at. That's one thing that will make me on edge faster than some things will. Because even if we disagree, if I'm respecting you enough to talk to you civilized and talk to you like a civilized person, don't start cussing at me, because number one, you're going to distract me from the point that you're making because you're wasting time with words that add nothing. Number two, you're not just going to talk to me like that. So this guy would just, cuss at me all day long. The other thing he did that I don't have a lot of patience for is he didn't explain himself at all. I finally told him one day, and I had really had to work on holding my temper, but I finally told him one day, this is what you do for a living. 12 months of the year. You've been doing this for several years. I'm just here this summer. I don't know everything that you're doing. You have to explain to me what you want me to help you with. Because no matter what project we were doing, he would say something real vague and walk out of the room and then come back and cuss at me because I hadn't done what he wanted. I finally was like, I can't read your mind. I don't know what you're talking about. Well, I told you this and this. Now, I'm going to tell you exactly what you said and what you didn't say and what made sense and what didn't. So we would get in way too much of heated stuff. And the thing I learned the most is just sometimes you got to tolerate working with people that you don't want to be around. Because for the most part in school, I got along with people pretty well. It's just not usually that hard for me. So having my first job and having some guy who tells me stuff that doesn't make a lot of sense, doesn't make himself clear, and then's got the audacity to yell and cuss at me like I should know what to do, I'm gonna admit, like, and this is very rare. There were a couple times where I actually thought to myself, this is just a temporary job. I'm gonna move on a couple months anyway. Might it be worth it to beat the crap out of him and just not come back? And I didn't do it, but I'm going to be real honest. That thought crossed my mind. That's how much he got on my nerve. I was like, you keep talking to me like this, I might answer that question. Yep. And I just might one day not be able to hold it in. I did, thankfully, and I moved on from there. And I've never beaten someone up on a job, nor have I ever been fired. But literally in my first couple months, I was like, am I going to have to end up shutting this guy's mouth? Because he just, and the other guys that were regulars flat out said, the rest of the year, we won't work with him. We can't stand him. We don't talk to him. Reason you're getting stuck with him is because everybody else here refuses to work with him. So they kind of were apologizing to him, but they're like, we won't work with that idiot. And that's unfortunately why the summer help always gets stuck with him. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that was some of my first work experience. Now, and this is a little bit along those lines, but when you're starting your first job, what was your perception of what having a job looks like, and how did that change once you started? So you already said your first job, so Talmad's the newspaper route. Before you did that, what was your perception of what it would be like to have a job, and then how did that change while you were there?
I'm not sure. I was also in a situation, well, I shouldn't say also, but I know you said your mother said, you got these responsibilities, so.
Right.
It's not like I had a bunch of responsibilities, but at the same time, my parents weren't big on me getting a job either for whatever reason.
Oh,
it's like,
okay.
just focus on school, finish that, you got plenty of time to get a job. So even when I got this one, it was more because I wanted to, not because somebody told me to or I had to. In fact, my mom, if I remember correctly, I don't think she tried to talk us out of it, because it was me and my sister. But it was just like, well, if y'all want to do it,
Okay.
So my perception of a job, I knew what it was, obviously. It's to provide for your family. And again, I learned that through the work ethic of my father.
Right.
And my mother, I should say my mother too, because it's not like she didn't work. They both just went to work, and that's kind of what she did. So like we were talking about college earlier, that was like my next logical step. Okay, if I get this job, here's the expectation.
Right.
I show up, I do this, I get paid. And I'm not trying to be so literal, but
that was just your perception.
It was a literal perception of what it was. And
it
didn't change much. The only difference I would say is, since this job was not me providing for myself, since this job was something I wanted to do, there was not the pressure or stress of you've got to go every day.
Right.
I did it, but I also knew I had the safety net. This is just something for the side.
If I don't show up tomorrow, so what?
Now, my perception actually changed later when, you no longer have your parents as a safety net. This is not a job that you want to have. You're like everybody else now.
Yeah.
You got to have this job to survive.
Yeah.
That's when my perspective changed, because the stuff that I got away with before, even though my dad set that good work ethic, I didn't say I followed it all the time. Before,
in fact, you said you didn't.
Yeah, before, if I didn't go, well, it'll be there tomorrow. It won't,
Yeah.
But the realization of, okay, this is real. You got to make decisions here. Like in your situation, if you decide, not that I ever did, but if you decide to hit this guy, not only is there going to be legal action, but on a more basic sense, if they don't go that route, you don't have this job anymore. Is this
I could lose my job. The next job I apply for, they may find out that I hospitalized a coworker. I could get assault charges.
And so I didn't realize that until there was a real consequence. That's when my perspective changed. Because before that, it was just, this is a nice little $200 or $300 I get to go do what I want to do with. Give my mom $40 or $50 just to say I did, but really, this is not make or break for either one of us. So it didn't change until, if you don't pay this bill, you don't have any lights. Right. If you don't pay this bill, you ain't got a place to live.
Let's break it way down. I pay you X amount per hour. If you don't work that hour, you don't get the X amount. Yeah. You have to work these hours for this money. Do the math at the end of the week. If you don't have this money, you don't pay these bills. Your lights don't stay on. Yeah.
And you had to learn when, to a certain extent, because they can't just tell you anything they want, but for the most part, when this guy or this gal tells you to do something, it's your job to, guess what? Do it. There is no, I don't feel like it, I don't want to. Let me try it this way.
Not today.
You do it the way they tell you, or you don't work there.
Or they don't have
anymore.
to keep you there. Yeah.
And so, yeah.
All right. What about you, Chris, with the yard mowing?
You know, honestly, I think our perception and everything what Talmadge said is very much like me. And I think that's really indicative of every kid. Because you go to a job and you take it. So, like for me, my perception of having what that job looked like is just like I said before, it's getting up every day and going to work.
Yeah.
You know, if you're sick, you don't go. But if not, you're up every morning and you go to work. Your perception changes when you have responsibilities. You had responsibility of the lights. I got to buy a car. Not a very expensive one, but I had to pay. So how am I going to pay for that monthly note? That insurance.
Earn the money,
You know, I had to work.
Yeah.
You had to go to work to get paid and to get paid to pay your bills. So responsibility, that's how it changes. And I think I think everybody goes through that. I mean, some have more responsibility than others, right? I mean, you got the kid that has to go to work to put food on the table for his mom.
And you got some that didn't need a job.
Some that didn't need a job, but
yeah.
they wanted it to go play the video game the arcade or whatever. Now, they don't have those anymore, but we did. You know,
We know what an arcade
we know
is.
everybody on there's like,
When
what's an
America
arcade?
really was great again.
Exactly, absolutely. But you know, like I said, I think everybody has the same thing. Is you had to get a job, you go to the job, and you go to the job and get paid. And you take that payment and pay out your responsibilities.
Right.
And so I think that's how our how that perception changes is that we get responsibilities.
Right.
We have to take care of responsibilities.
Have to and want to are two
You're
different
right.
things.
I was going to say they're two
Yeah.
different things because you may be thrust into a situation where you have to make sure the lights are stayed on. You get food is on the table. Diapers are for,
That
for
food's
your
gonna be
brother or
paid for.
sister.
That gas in the car is gonna be paid for. The car
Because you don't have a
itself's gonna be paid
choice,
for,
right?
Yeah.
You don't have a choice. So then there's those that
Not feeling like it kind of disappears from the equation.
Yeah. There's still those. I mean, I grew up. I still lived at home. You know, did I have to work? Well, if I wanted to pay for that car that I got, yeah.
Yeah.
And for insurance to go somewhere, yeah. For me to play ball, yeah, I'd have paid for that. You know, Dad wasn't gonna pay for that, but could I not have a job and not have any of those things? Yeah.
Yeah.
But I wasn't.
If you didn't want to have those things.
But I wasn't in a situation where I had to get a job. Is my point.
Yeah. Right. And unlike some people.
Some people in this world have to have a job to put food on the table.
Yeah.
Even though mom's working a full job.
Yeah. Contingent upon your situation, how many mouths are to feed, that may not be enough.
Yeah. So that's
Yeah.
I think we all go through that same
Yeah.
situation. It's just at what point does responsibility become involved?
Yeah.
And
that's pretty similar to mine. Like what my perception of a job, we've all same as y'all. You get up, you go to work.
yeah, you get up.
We
go to
all
work, and
learned
get
that
paid.
from our dads. None of us knew each other growing up. Our dads didn't know each other, but we all learned the same thing.
Yeah.
And then my perception, I guess, what y'all are saying, yeah, the responsibility. I touched on it already, but part of my perception changed with if I do punch this guy in the mouth. Like when you're in school, if you get in a fight, you get in a little bit of trouble at school.
Yeah.
My thought when I had to restrain, because I like literally, and I hate to admit this, I had an actual desire to beat the crap out of this guy at certain points. And you guys know me well enough. That's not normal, but I was 18 and I wasn't quite as good at controlling my emotions at that time. And I've really never been the type person to take a whole lot of disrespect either. So I was like literally tempted to teach him not to talk to me that way. And I had to realize, I literally remember telling myself one day, well, Jared, yeah, you can do that. I'm not going to say you can't, because you can, but you will lose this job.
Yeah.
You might get assault charges. You might have to live with the fact that you hospitalized this man that's now out of work, and does he have a family to take care of? You might go for your next job and then find out you got fired for hospitalizing a coworker. Like that's kind of how my perception of what
And I
changed
knew
was
that-
all the repercussions and all the responsibilities that come with it.
And to prove that we know that's not you, that's why I gave the example I gave when I said, there's a consequence. Like in your case, I said, if you can hit this guy, but
Yeah.
if you do this,
There's
and
consequence.
I knew when you were telling the story that it bothered you because, like you said, had you not told me that story in the way you told me, I would no way believe that you would ever want to hit somebody because that's not in your nature.
Right.
But just the way you expressed it, I could tell, and that's why I used that example.
Right.
Based on what you said, look, yeah, you can hit this guy. You certainly can.
You can punch him as hard as you want to, as many times
and
as you
if
want
you're
to,
lucky,
but
you might. And if you're lucky, you might lose the job and not get
anything
arrested,
else.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, so when you have to learn to not only I have to do what they tell me, when they tell me, how they tell me every single day, but I gotta follow their rules. And if I get upset, I gotta learn how to manage that frustration because I'm not a kid anymore. And there are
Right.
consequences to what I do.
I'm an adult. I got to learn how to behave like one, conduct myself like one. Yeah. Chris, I actually don't know the answer to this.
Okay.
I know you've had, the mowing job and some different things and what you do now working in information technology. Have you ever had an actual like leadership position where you had people that reported to you? Like have you ever been people's boss?
Not until about 20 years ago. So
20 years is a long time.
I was
Well, I'm
gonna
just
say-
saying. But I mean, I had it for 3-4 years.
Okay, so 20 years ago you
I'm
had
just
a 3 or
saying
4
it
year
didn't
stretch.
start until that
Okay.
happened. That happened in 2000,
Okay.
and it ran to 2005. So what? Four
Okay.
and a half, 5 years.
So
Less than that.
what was
But that's- at that point, from the time I was in high school, it was just me. I mean, I guess I had people that I hired to come. Hey, I'll pay you $20, or I'll pay you $10, $15 an
To
hour
help me mow this
to come mow
yard.
these yards.
Okay.
whatever. But I mean, it's really not. I mean, it's leadership, but it really isn't.
It's a little different.
It's
yeah.
a little different dynamic. But
So-
as far as a leadership perspective, that happened in 2000.
What job was that?
That was
in
working.
2000?
I was I really was a tier level 2 technician at that point, and it wasn't too long I moved up to team lead, which is level 3. But
Okay.
that was working for an ISP, doing technical support for an ISP.
Okay. And then Talmadge, I know you've had a leadership position because he was my first boss at the place that we met. What was your first leadership
Oh
position?
gosh, my first leadership, I've been in leadership since 1991.
73. Oh, okay.
Yeah. I worked for a market research company and was a supervisor there. We did surveys nationwide over the phone.
You've told me about
Yeah,
that actually.
And then
Yeah.
that's how, and so the majority of my life I've been in call center management with rare breaks here and there. There's like a 3 or 4 year period where I wasn't in management, but other than that, I've been in management for over 30 years. Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, the first management job I got or supervisor job I got, I was only an agent on the phone for 2.5 months, a little longer than that. Let me see, about 4 months. And they came to me and they actually said, another supervisor walked up to me and said, "Hey, how's your attendance?" And I'm so dumb. Of course, I would know my own attendance because I'm the one that went to work or
Why
didn't go to
wouldn't
work.
you know? Yeah.
Right. But he was like, "What's your attendance?" I don't know. I guess pretty good. Because I know it kind of caught me off guard. Why are
Right.
you asking me this? And he's like, "Well, make sure you watch your attendance because we've got a supervisor class coming up and your name keeps coming up." And he said, "We have a policy here where we can't promote someone to supervisor until they've been here 6 months. This class is going to start before you're 6 months. So we really have to lobby for you to be in there because you really aren't, you don't meet that qualification.
Right, you don't meet the criteria.
So you got to be perfect everywhere else." Well,
Yeah.
that changed my whole perspective. I mean, obviously I was doing a good job because they noticed
Or they
me.
wouldn't have even been mentioned.
But I didn't know I was doing a good job. I just thought I was doing what they told me to do. And then,
Right.
it made me say, okay, well, I got to make sure I'm perfect now,
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, and so they kind of bent the rule for me. I got in the class, but what they told me was, we're going to train you to be a supervisor now, but you can't actually supervise until you're 6 months.
Okay.
And so they kind of bent the rule and got me into it. And that was while I was in college, never intending. I mean, who says I want to be a call center management?
Yeah.
For my life, but
That was right after Kung Fu Master and Astronaut.
not right after, but
Yeah.
after, yes. And don't forget Astronaut, yeah. And so just based on that, with that experience, living here in the Metroplex like we do, the Dallas area, per capita, for a while, I don't know if it's still that way, but there were more call centers in the Dallas-Fort Worth area than anywhere in the world. And so,
I didn't know it was a world. I knew it was one of the top in the
yeah.
country.
Now this
for a
was
while, but
30 years. I don't know if it's
Oh,
still
okay.
the case, but it's still gonna be pretty high up there, if not.
I would imagine.
And so you could literally get a call center job everywhere, and so it just kind of grew into that.
To that
career.
point, the place where you and I worked, and I don't, for reasons,
Yeah, we don't need to say
I don't need to say the name, but a lot of our co-workers either came from or went to another call center. That was like a lot of people worked with.
And
there.
a lot of them 5, 6, 7 times.
Yes,
I mean, and
yeah.
you become a call center
That's just what
career.
you do.
That's what you do.
Yeah.
I mean,
And so
that's
that-
what my job was, the ISP call center.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
totally. I've seen people
Yeah.
do that. You hear
Yeah.
from them.
I used to know people that literally they would pick call center jobs in the area that had 6-week training, 8-week training, 12-week training. You know, the longer training classes. Because some places you train for 3 days and they put you on the phone.
Right.
But they would find places really with longer, like where we work. I think it was 6 weeks.
It was 6 weeks. Yeah.
And they would typically find the longer ones on purpose. And they would be applying for jobs all throughout their training class. And they would just go from training class to training class to training class. So there was no pressure in the training because they never planned on actually doing the
That's
work.
actually pretty darn funny.
And I know a guy that did that for almost, it wasn't quite 2 years, but literally for like almost 2 years. He just went from,
The big risk you
Also,
run though
was
is
he
why
trying
do
to
people
just get
keep
trained?
hiring you? Because if they see that
he
you're
didn't
leaving
put all the
that
stuff
fast,
on the resume. He
okay.
would just put because, you know, he would put, no one's going to question if you're out of work for 8 weeks. You know,
Well,
2
yeah, you
months,
gotta be
a month.
strategic, yeah.
And now what I thought you were going to say was you got to time that just right.
Well,
Because
that
if you-
too.
If you don't time it right, you're going to be without work at some point.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he was. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure it wasn't like
There might have been a
perfect.
week or two gap
Yeah,
somewhere.
but for the most part, yeah, for basically 2 years, he just went. And imagine the lack of pressure you had in the training class. Because we all know the anxiety of your training, but when you take that first call, I don't care how much you were trained. That first call, your heart is
beating.
Well, because
100
you don't
miles
know
an hour.
what you're going to get on that first call.
Or you could be in a 6 weeks training. We show you everything we know, and the first call you get is something we didn't show you because you can't train everything.
You can't prepare for every
So
situation.
just imagine going through training class, but not having that anxiety.
Not
because
even
you're
caring what
I'm never going
happened.
to take this call anyway.
That's honestly pretty funny. That's not a career solution, obviously,
Right.
but that's to do it for that. That's actually pretty funny. So, Talon, you told me a story years ago, and I want you to elaborate on it. I was going to say a sentence, and I think you're going to know.
I hope so, because sometimes we miss.
We do sometimes. But when are they going to stop ordering fries?
That's what I worked at. Well, I won't say a fast food.
Yeah,
restaurant.
you worked. Yeah, so a place they sold fries. Tell us about that, and then what you learned
Well,
from
the
that
whole
situation.
story came out from is just people's perspective, and you don't see the perspective until you do the job. Like when you go to a fast food restaurant and you order your food, of course you're going to order your food and drive out and eat it and go home or do whatever
not
you're going
give
to do,
any thought to
and not
anything else.
give any thought to it the rest of the day. But when you work there, and I was so dumb because I had never worked fast food before. And they put me on the fries thing, and so I give the first person fries, and the second, and the third, and like 30 minutes into it, I'm thinking, when are they going to stop ordering fries? Because you never think of this is a never-ending process.
Yeah.
When you get your
Because
food,
almost everybody's going to order a side, and the
Right.
vast majority of them are
are
going
going
to
to
probably
be
be
fries.
fries.
And
Yeah.
I never thought of, and I know it's foolish because why wouldn't you think that? But
But you weren't in that situation. It never occurred to you to
I was
think
like,
that way.
These fries just don't keep asking for
Who
them.
keeps asking? I just gave you 7 of them.
When
Why
are
do
they
you
gonna
want
stop
more?
ordering these fries? So that story comes from I'm trying to tell people it's not what you do in life, it's how you see it.
Yeah.
And your perspective is different. When you're shelling them out, it seems like a never-ending process. When you're eating them, you don't give it a second thought. You eat it and you move on to the next
Yeah.
thing that you have to do. So I'm surprised you remember that.
I
Yeah.
remember that he told me that story probably 15 years ago. I'm not joking.
Wow.
It was early on after I met you, and the point you made, because the place we worked, people complained a lot
Yeah.
about a lot of different things, and people we would overhear stuff about like, well, this stupid person asked this and this stupid person asked that, and some of our coworkers would be like, when are they gonna stop saying these stupid things? So you told us that story in a meeting one day, and you said, y'all know what I learned? I eventually learned they're not gonna stop ordering fries. It's never gonna end. People come through here, that's what we do. We cook fries, we serve them to people, they're not gonna stop. So next time I hear one of y'all ask the question, when are people gonna stop saying stupid things to me on the phone? Here's my answer. They're not. Maybe not every person will say the same stupid thing, but in an 8-hour shift, you're all gonna be asked questions that you think are stupid. You're gonna have to be
20
dealing
times
with
a shift, every
situations
single day.
20 times a day that you may not want to put up with. That's the job. That's
Or that
what
you've
we
answered
do here.
100 times, but it's the first time you answered it for that
Yes,
person.
you may
Their
have told that
perspective is
same
once.
thing 48
Your perspective
times.
is 100.
And that was and I loved that lesson because I wasn't one of the ones that went around saying that, but I knew a lot of people that did. And your point was, the hard answer is, if you can't handle it, this job's not for you, because this is the job. But also the answer is, it's all about perspective. you've told 58 or 7 other people that same thing, but this next person, it's their first time asking the
know.
question that you think is stupid. You still got to treat them with the same respect because you did the last 87 or 6 people.
It's very much like the one that I've told before too. I don't know if I told you this one, but in call centers, you'll hear this phrase. If you go to any break room, sooner or later you're going to hear somebody sit down at the break room table and go, I don't know what's going on with these people today.
I do remember you saying that too.
These people are all we got.
Yes, you
When
told
say-
that in a different meeting. I remember.
when you say the word these people, you make it sound like today these people
Right.
are causing
There's
all
a
these
small
problems.
section of
Guess what? These are the people that call. These are all the people we got. If these people don't call us, you ain't got a job.
We're not in business.
These people are all we got.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you
Now-
need to learn to deal with it.
To that, and kind of to bounce off of that, when I was at my first Chick-fil-A, I was the training director for a while, and I trained a lot of new hires. I remember training a guy one day, and it was during the lunch rush, and I was training him on taking orders on the iPad out in the parking lot. That's a busy job,
Yeah.
and some of it is monotonous. I'm taking the same types of orders, I'm interacting, but I looked at it as each guest is a new guest. I'm having a new interaction, a new experience with each one of them. This guy that I was training one day, I actually pulled him aside later and had a pretty serious talk with him because he complained almost nonstop. He was careful not to do it right in front of a guest,
yeah.
but he kept looking at the line and literally saying stuff like, what's wrong with all these people? And then he would hear me have an interaction with a guest that was a regular guest, and he'd wonder how I knew, and I'm like, oh, they come through 3 or 4 times a week. Are they stupid? They got nothing better to do? And at one point I thought
they're not
about
what?
He's like, are they stupid? Do they have nothing better to do?
Oh,
Why do
better
they come
to
through
do,
here
okay.
every day? I really wanted to say to him, do you somehow miss the part that I'm one of your bosses? You're talking about our guests
Right.
saying that they're stupid. So actually, when I pulled him aside later, I did say that. I was like, there's several things that bothered me about that. Number one, you're calling our guests stupid, and I don't appreciate that. They are our guests. You asked what are they doing here? That's the wrong question. I want them here. If you want to keep your job, you want them here. If they don't come through here, we don't make money, and none of us have a job. Number two, not only do they pay our checks, I want them to feel like guests in our home. I preach that to our whole staff. They're a guest that we invited here. We're taking care of them. If you don't want them here, if your perception is, why are they here? Are they stupid? You probably don't belong here either. Like without going off on him, I kind of ripped into him. I was like, if this is what
He
I'm going to
knew.
keep hearing, well, I actually fired him like a week later, but not just for
Don't tell
that.
that part of the story next
Yeah,
time.
not just for that.
could've
Well,
left
no,
that
it was
one
a
out.
buildup of other stuff. It
Actually,
wasn't just
guys,
that.
he turned the agent around, and it became the best employee that he ever had.
That has happened, but not with that guy. But so to all that point, what would y'all say you learned the most about your first leadership positions, like your foray into leadership?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
I got to think about it. That was,
I would say early on anyway, I'm not saying it held because your perceptions change over time. But for me, it was two things kind of neck and neck. First one is the relationships that you build with people matter.
Mm-hmm.
And it ties into the second thing because I didn't have all the knowledge. I just told you guys I'd only been there 4 months when they were looking to promote me to
Right.
supervisor. So obviously I knew going into it, I'd be supervising people that had been there 7 years, 8 years, 12
Yeah.
years. And so how was I going to overcome the fact that they had more experience? They probably thought they deserved the job. Well, the best way to do that is number one, like I said, build strong relationships and understand that going into it.
Yeah.
And then secondarily, not being afraid to admit it, letting them know, look, I know you've been here 12 years. I know you know more than me. My job is to disseminate information to you, to make sure that you execute it, to hold you accountable when you don't. Just because I'm the supervisor doesn't mean you can't hold me to that same standard. Because my job to do those things for you, by the same token, I need you to be successful. I don't take these calls. So the stats and numbers that you bring in every day, that's going to reflect on me. That's how I'm judged. You know, if you get an 87% on a QA score, that's my 87% because I don't take a call, so I don't get my own percentage.
Right.
So basically, I need you to be successful. I understand you know more than me. They've chosen me for a different reason. It's not always what you know.
Right.
It's how you can communicate it. How honest are you? Can you build relationships? Are you afraid to have tough conversations? Can you give information clearly and concisely?
What is your
And that's
attendance like? What you talked about earlier.
all those kinds of things. And so it's all of that. It's not so much do you know the job better than me. And then the final thing I would say to that is I would always tell people, you take these calls every day. You've taken them for 8 years. I expect you to know how to take these calls
Right.
better than I do. If you don't, there's a problem.
Yeah.
So making sure they understand what their job is, my job is, so you can build that relationship and also admit you know more than I do, if they do.
Yeah. Okay.
For me, I realized that, every employee that I worked with that was working under me, is different. So how I deal with Talmadge is different how I'm going to deal with you.
Right.
And, it's funny enough, I'd forgotten that Talmadge was in call center work. And that's what I was doing was call center work, working, doing technical support for an ISP, and had to look at all that and had to explain to people, what you do reflects upon me and how
Yeah.
I actually manage you and how well I manage you. But I was also lucky in the sense that when my time period managing those on the phone was a very short period of time.
Okay.
Because I got moved to a group that wasn't on the phone
Okay.
on a daily basis, answering customer problems. We were dealing with special projects for that company. And this is a national company. It's not a company, just a Dallas company. It was for a national call center, but we were dealing with our customers and from an IP allocation, you need a new IPs? Hey, we can get you a new IPs. This is how we're going to help you get those IPs.
Okay.
And this is the process you're going to need to follow. And we had a couple of guys that handled that. So I had a couple of guys that also helped with IP reclamations and with POP closures. And so the way I handled one person was just not the way I handled another. It didn't work for so-and-so. And so,
Yeah.
it's funny. It's just our experience is very similar in that regards. Now, since I've been with where I'm at now, I am my own. I have a boss now, yes, but I'm pretty much.
As long as the
my
work
own.
gets done.
It's just
Yeah.
kind of me. I'm just kind of.
Okay.
I don't manage anybody.
You manage your own
I manage
responsibilities.
Yeah, I mean, I still go to my boss for everything, and he
Yeah.
manages me, but I still have the work ethic to do what needs to be done. But
Yeah.
as far as that leadership role, it was very similar to his because they
Yeah.
were in the same field.
Same vein, yeah. Well, my actual first official leadership position was also in a call center, the one where I met Talmadge.
Okay.
I
I didn't know that was
had
your first leadership position. It strikes me as I thought you had a ton of leadership. It's because the way you related to people. But I'm sorry to cut you.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate that actually. And the interesting thing is, before that job, and I won't spend too much time on this, I had, you know what? I apologize. My first actual leadership position, but it was a little bit different, was when I was about 20 working at that same warehouse where my dad volunteered me to go to work one day. But I wasn't one of the head bosses. I was like the third ranking in the warehouse. So if the manager and assistant weren't around, then Jared
still
was in
leadership,
charge.
though, yeah.
But it was. So, and I, in that job, I did have people that were older than me. And also, I was like 20. But when I'm clean shaven, I look a lot younger than I am. And it's always been that way. So when I was 20, a lot of people thought I looked like I was about 16. So sometimes if there was an angry customer, I want to talk to the boss. I want to talk to. Here comes this 5'5", clean shaven, looking like a 16-year-old walking up. Well, who's the boss? I am. How can I help you? But what I learned from that was I knew my job. I had to exude confidence. Usually, once I got to talking to them, even if they were 3 times my age, I earned their respect pretty quickly because then they realized, okay, this guy actually
As long as you
does
can resolve the
know what
problem.
he's doing. But yeah, that was my first. But then other jobs I had, I would always take on more responsibility just because that's kind of who I am. So then, but what I learned a lot from the place you and I worked, I wasn't looking for leadership. I mean, I kind of look because you and some other people were always telling me like, well, don't you want to be a supervisor and this and that? And you mentioned just kind of the way I interact with people or communicate with people. I remember you telling me real early on, probably my first month or two there, I remember you saying, Jared, I can already tell you can accomplish whatever you want to in this job just by the way you handle yourself, the way you ask really good questions. You think like several layers deeper than people who've been here for 10 years. Like you're asking the questions that are on the level of those of us in, and I mean that.
Now you see why he invites me to his channel all the time.
that first conversation put us on the path. But one of the things I learned is similar to what y'all were both saying. When I got into leadership at that place, like by that time I wasn't even interested in it. I wasn't looking for it. They kind of had to like say, we want you specifically. Like it was basically an offer without me interviewing.
And I know one specific person was really instrumental
Yes,
in that.
yes, she was. Yeah. And I finally was just like, okay. And my whole thing at first was like, I don't know if I want to deal with all that distraction because I'm pursuing my career in movies and I don't know if I want to deal with all that extra stuff. But then I was like, you know what? As much as I love helping people, maybe this is the best way for me to contribute here. Maybe I can help make a lot of other people's jobs better. So that's why I stepped into that role. And then one of the things I learned was balancing having people report to you of different ages and different ability levels. There were two people that reported to me that were old enough to be my parents. One of them had been working there since before the internet was around. She'd been working there like 33 years. And suddenly I was her boss. And then I had some people that were like 20 years old. It was one of their first jobs. And to Chris's point, I can't coach every person the same way. That doesn't work. I had to learn. I had to really, and one of my best strengths in any job is relationship building and communication. I guess two of my biggest strengths. But I had to really use that in that capacity to learn about everybody so I could know how to properly coach them. I wasn't going to tell the person who'd been working there 33 years the same things I would tell somebody who's in their first 6 months.
Right.
She don't need to know all that. I'm going to try to help her grow in areas where maybe I am stronger, even though the knowledge is not the same and this and that. So kind of like what you said, you got to learn your personnel. You got to learn how to connect with each person. And I also looked at it, I equated my time there in any leadership position too. I equated it to directing a film. I might at some point direct a film where I'm directing an actor or actress who's been in the business a lot longer than I have. But I wrote this role and this is what I want and I cast you for a reason. So I'm going to guide you, but I'm also going to trust you to be who you are because I know what you've done. I might in that same film be directing a 5-year-old that just finished kindergarten that didn't even do their school play that fall. But maybe I know their parents and they want to get into acting or whatever. I might be directing those two people in the same scene.
Yeah.
And I've got to learn how to direct both of them the right way. So in each leadership position I've had, I always kind of look at that correlation and go, okay, well, how would you direct two people with this different age difference and this different experience, level of experience different? And I'd apply that to whatever leadership position I had at jobs. And I always told people, and both of you guys may have heard me say this, but I've said it to people I work with, I have no interest whatsoever in being a manager or a boss. So I'm going to break down those titles. A manager manages situations, okay, right? A boss bosses people, tells people what to do. I've got no interest in those things. What I want to be and what I hope people see me is as a leader. I want to be someone who leads and inspires people to be their best. Now, under that umbrella, am I going to have to manage a lot of situations? Yes. Under that umbrella, are there times where I have to be a boss and hold people accountable and maybe write people up and maybe terminate employment? Yes. But what my approach is and my intent is, I want to be a leader. I want to be somebody who helps lead you to be your best, not somebody who says, I'm the boss and I said so. Because we've all probably worked for people like that, and that's never been my desire.
I'm sure that's still out there because obviously people are going to be people.
Right.
And things aren't going to change 100%. But I've seen companies have made more of an effort to embrace your philosophy over the last 20 years. For example, like where I work now, my official title is supervisor, but when they're referencing us in meetings or talking about our job duties, they always say, well, here's a message to our leaders, or here's a discussion for our leaders, or this is what we're discussing with our leaders to disseminate to their agents. So that's changing. Will it change 100% ever? No, because you're going to have those ego-driven people.
Yeah.
But I think most people, if they can get rid of their ego, then that's when the leadership starts to develop. Because you're right, both titles intermix.
Right.
But when you're focused on being a boss, you're focused on telling people what to do.
It's the
When
mentality.
you're focused
yeah.
on being a leader, you're focused on getting something accomplished. Using people to do it, yes.
Yes.
So people can start
Guiding
thinking
them to do it, yes.
So if people start thinking of themselves as leaders and implementing that style in their management or supervisory skill set, then all of a sudden I think it's better for the company, which means it's going to be better for the customer. It's going to be better for the employee. You're going to have better employee retention. You're going to have
Yes.
better, and then more people are going to want to work for your company because they can actually build a career.
I was about to say you'll attract better talent
Yeah.
and you'll keep talent longer. I think 100% of that. So, now Chris, I know you started your own mowing business. You
Yep.
talked about mowing yards at 17. How old were you when you started your mowing business, and what was your perception of success when you started that business?
I was 24
Okay.
when I started my own business. You know, I went into it just because, I didn't like what I was doing for a job at the time. I was working in a warehouse and didn't really care for it. So I thought, you know what, I can mow yards. I did this once before. Why can't I do it now?
Okay.
So I've got a truck. I can get a weed eater and I can get a mower and some plastic bags, and I think I can handle this. So that's what I did. Now, what was the perception of the success? My perception of success in that business was gaining more business,
Okay.
in the sense of when people looked at me and said, so and so recommended you, or, you know, I live down the street and I've seen you do this yard. Would you come give me a quote? Because that tells me, one, that I was doing a good enough job that I was referenced
Right.
to somebody. And the other thing was somebody down the street saw the work that I did
Yeah.
and the quality of work that I did. And then I was there every Thursday or every Friday or whatever, or every week. That yard looks clean, looks so clean,
Right.
looks so good that my quality of work was enough for them to want to have me come take a look at their yard.
Gotcha.
Google
Yeah.
So-
review before a Google review.
But, absolutely, you're absolutely
Oh,
right.
yeah, really.
I mean, you're talking mid '90s. You know, because the internet was just a baby at that point. You know,
Most of us didn't know what an internet was
yeah,
at that time.
at that time it wasn't the internet. I'm getting on AOL tonight.
The
You won't
World
get on AOL
Wide
tonight?
Web and the American
that was
Online.
just So for me, that was a perception of being successful as getting more jobs.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, ultimately you get paid more, right? You get paid, but
But in order to get paid more,
either way,
you
it's
gotta
business
have
growth.
jobs.
Collect
It's
more
a
jobs,
business
yeah.
growth.
It's the same thing. It's business growth both
Business
ways.
growth.
Okay. Now, this next question, if y'all want to name names, you can. That's up to you.
Oh, I got a name.
Same question for both of you.
I said that too fast. I'm sorry.
Who is the worst boss? Who's the worst boss you've ever had, and why?
That's hard for me because I've always tried to take something positive from every boss I've had.
Yeah.
Especially in a leadership position, even though I didn't like very much. But there's some I like less than others. There was one I worked for, and I just thought he was pretentious. I didn't trust him. I felt he was more concerned about looking good for the big bosses instead of rolling up his sleeves and actually doing the work. I thought he threw his employees, including myself, under the bus. Some of it was my fault because I'll never say something is all one person's fault. But some situations could have been handled better by him and by me. But to end on a positive, I would say I still pulled something positive from him. And the one thing I pulled positive from him was presentation is important. Now, I felt like he focused too much on presentation. In other words, it all looks good, but when you lift up and look under everything, it's a mess. But still, presentation is
Perception
important.
does matter.
Yes. And
Okay.
so I had to balance between, I get what he's trying to do. I see why he's driven this way. But at the end of the day, no matter how good it looks on the surface, if the work isn't done, you're going to get found out sooner or later.
So that's something valuable to learn in both respects. Perception is important, but you got to get the work done, or the perception doesn't
Yeah.
solve everything. Okay. What about you, Chris?
All right. Well, I'll say his name. His name was Dan, and that's all I'm going to say because that's all I remember.
Okay.
I don't remember his last name. He was a jerk. I can tell you that. I got written up for something that was extremely minor and put on probation for something that, and still, I just didn't think he was a good boss. He was arrogant, prideful. He just wasn't. I can remember his boss telling me to take him to the airport, and I said, no problem. Does he have to get there in one piece?
Oh, no.
And he just laughed.
Can I deliver a corpse? What are we talking about here?
You know, but that boss was cool. I loved him. I loved working with that guy because you knew where you stood with him. The guy that I was referring to is just, he was not a very good boss.
Was it mostly because he was pretentious or what?
He was arrogant. Yeah, it's just the way he treated people. You know, and I didn't like being treated the way he did. Now, granted, my write-up, maybe it was warranted, but I didn't, it was a mistake that I made, but, I'll own up to my mistake, but, this is still 30-something years later, and I'm like...
And you had his name at the ready when I asked you the question.
For darn
yeah,
sure.
So.
For darn sure. But, yeah, that's,
Okay.
I didn't like the guy, so...
So I'm not going to name names. Talmadge will have an idea because there was the place we worked. There's at least a few that come to mind that are amongst the worst bosses I've ever had. There's one in particular, and we've talked off camera. This individual, I will say, kind of like Talmadge said, you can take something good away. This person knew how to do her job. She was very knowledgeable in certain aspects of it, and she did a good job at certain aspects of it. She, in my opinion, was one of the worst as far as people skills that I've ever worked for or worked with. To the point where she would come in smiling and act like y'all were friends, and you knew the moment you walked away, she was telling everybody how you shouldn't work there and this and that. And most people found her out because she talked so bad about so many people. And one thing that bothered me, there's actually a couple of them that did what I'm about to describe towards me, and Talmadge, I'm sure, will remember this. There were times where I just felt like there was a particular dislike towards me, and I'm not the type of person that loses sleep over, every person has to like me. If you like me, great. If you don't, I usually don't lose sleep over it. I try to get along with everybody. For the most part, I do. But if, at the end of the day, if I'm who I am and someone doesn't like me, I can live with it. Right. But at that job, there were times where it almost didn't matter what I did. There was going to be some complaint. There was going to be something they found to complain about. And then they would at times sit me down, or I'd ask a question. They would give me a vague answer that made no sense whatsoever. And then when I would politely ask a follow-up question to try to make sense, they would usually just get frustrated and give me a smart aleck response and walk off, and then later tell everybody how combative I was. And I'm not asking Talmadge to elaborate on it. He was there, so he knows. But there was a perception with a certain small group of my higher up bosses of, oh, Jared's just so difficult. He's so combative. Truth is, you couldn't get one over on me that you could tell me something that made no sense. If I saw through it, I was going to ask you questions, and then it comes about, oh, he likes to argue. No, I just like to get to the truth.
I thought you were talking about one person in the beginning. Now I think you're talking about another person.
There was, you know who both of them are. There was two of them that I would put kind of in this category, and Talmadge is not wrong. There was one I was talking more about at the beginning, and now it's just a
You
little
bled
bit
off
of
to
the
the
other
other
one.
one.
But there's similarities in
But I
both.
know both.
They both.
And when you split off, I knew exactly.
Yeah, you
what
know
the split
exactly
was.
who. But here's the thing too.
And see, one of them I liked and one of them I didn't.
Yes,
So-
and I know that too. But here's the thing too. Both of them did some of that same stuff to me.
They did.
I know why you see one and
Yeah.
like why you
And
heard
you're
what
right
you
in that
heard.
too, because they both.
But they both did that same type of stuff with me, and both of them flat out didn't like me and a lot, and
And the funny part about it is, I don't think they liked each other.
probably
In
not.
fact, I know they.
But
Well,
a
I know
lot-
on one side they didn't like.
Okay,
each other.
I
know
don't.
about on the
I
other.
can see that. Yeah, a lot of people, and I don't know if Talmadge. I don't want to put words in his mouth. He may never have said this, but a lot of other people we worked with would tell me, "Well, Jared, you know why they don't like you, don't you? It's because they can't outsmart you. Because they'll say stuff to you, and I'm not saying I'm the smartest one in the room or anything like that, but they would say ignorant things to me to try to just push me off.
And I don't think it was like an intelligence thing, but I think, to your point, they're used to giving simplistic explanations to something, and someone accepting
Someone just
it.
going away.
The only difference is, if it was simplistic, you did not accept it. Not because you're being combative, but if you didn't believe it or understand it, you're going to continue to ask why.
And that was a big
when
part
they
of
didn't
it.
have the real answer themselves, because that happens to all of us. That happens on my job.
Right.
Agent asked me a question, I don't know the answer, and I have to guard against it, but I'm just being honest, I do it. If you ask me a question I don't know, sometimes I'm like, why are you asking me this question? It's not because you asked me. I'm upset with myself because I don't know it, and I know I
Right.
should know it, but instead of owning that, I get upset with the agent. And so that's what happened to them. They're used to them spitting out their 2 or 3 word explanation and someone just buying it.
Yeah.
And you didn't.
That's what
And
happened.
that's what it
Honestly,
was.
that's what happened. And I could have accepted all day long if they just were like, you know what?
They were afraid to say I don't
That's
know.
a good point. I hadn't thought about it, Jared. Let me get you a better answer and come back. Because I'm just really not sure. We hadn't run into that, or let me think about it. Neither one of these two ever did that. They would go deeper in the nonsensical
And not let it go.
and not let it go. And that's why they had friction with me, because I was combative and liked to argue. No, I just like to get a truthful answer out of stuff. And if it doesn't make sense, I'm going to ask other questions because I care enough about the job and the people that this answer affects to try to get the right answer.
You could be like a dog with a bone. And sometimes I think you did that once you realize, I'm not going to say you had them on the ropes, but once you realize they don't really know, you could have let it go. But I think sometimes you're like, let's see how far we can kind of take this.
I
Just
don't know
for
if
the
that was
laugh of
ever
it
my
all.
intent. I can see where you might think that. I don't know if that was ever my intent. It was more of a case of, so do you really not know? Like, let me
Well,
ask
that's what
you
I'm saying.
something
Yeah, you
else.
kept-
Like, I just wanted to be, I was like, am I hearing this right? Like, you really don't, but you just won't just admit
That you
that
don't
you're
know.
not sure. So, yeah, you know, that was, for me, I don't, and I said this earlier about the guy that I worked with years ago. I don't do well when you don't communicate well with me.
Mm-hmm.
It frustrates me. I'm a very thorough communicator. I think I'm a very effective communicator. A lot of people will say I talk too much, but guess what? At the end of the conversation, you're going to know what I wanted you to know. When somebody doesn't give me good answers or says something that makes no sense and tries to push it off as truth, I just don't function well that way on the job or just in life. I'm like, just tell me the truth. Tell me, like, flesh it out
Makes
to tell me something specific. If you're not willing to give me the time of day to do that, you're not doing me any good. So that was one of the problems I had
Yeah, that makes sense.
with those bosses there. But I would say, too, to what you learned, I wouldn't say either one of them were unqualified to do what they were doing. I think they had areas they needed to improve upon that they didn't try to improve upon, but there are other areas that they did know. So, I can say that.
Well, knowing the two people, and I know you didn't ask me this question, but I'll comment on the positive from both of them.
Okay.
'Cause one of them I like very much, and you know some of the reasons why. They were a big supporter and believer in me.
Yes.
Gigantic believer in me, and I'll never forget that. But I would say from both of them, from the first person you were talking about, you're exactly right. They knew the job.
Oh, yeah.
That wasn't the issue. They knew the job, and they, believe it or not, they knew how to motivate people to a point. In other words, if things were going smoothly and you had a good relationship with them, they could motivate that person.
Yes.
Anybody that they didn't like or had quote unquote disagreement with, I'm not sure they could motivate that person. So they weren't. But I'm just saying they had the skill set. They just chose when to
They
use
chose
it.
not to. Yeah. I concur.
And then with the other person, I've never met someone that's so loyal to the company.
I can see that
Her
too.
company loyalty was off the chart, and she was a believer in the product. She's a believer in the company, and she truly did want. Like, I remember, I don't want to give away who it is, but I remember one time I called the folks that we dealt with customers. You know, we didn't call them customers,
Right.
but it was early on in my career there, so I wasn't used to calling them
What
members.
was the term we used?
Yeah, I wasn't used to that, so I said, "Well, our customers," and no, there are members, and I'm like,
Why does this matter?
but I get it because the mindset was these are our members, this is our family.
Right, don't think
treat
of them as
but
customers.
I didn't get it, and I mean
That's
she
kind of
was-
like at Chick-fil-A. I call them guests. It's the same mentality. It's like they're not a customer.
Yeah.
That's a business transaction. They're a guest in our home.
Exactly, so
here.
you get
it's
it,
the,
yeah.
it's the same things. And I saw that out of that person as well. So to the flip side, who's the best boss you've ever had and why?
Wow, the best. I've taken positives from all of them and learned from all of them, and all of them have made me the good employee that I hope I am today.
Yeah.
But if I was pushed to one, I'd actually say the manager that I have now.
Oh wow.
Just because I would say he's got a lot of strengths. He's a good communicator. He believes in his people. He's not a micromanager. He gives you room to do what you need to do. But at the same time, he has the proper balance of, I'm going to give you room until you prove you don't deserve it.
Okay.
Because he's not afraid to have the tough conversation. He's not afraid to hold you accountable. And sometimes with bosses, they're good at one and not the other.
Yeah.
Some are great at holding you accountable, but they don't support you. And they micromanage you. Some don't micromanage you, but you can get away with everything.
And then they don't know how to rein it
And they
in.
don't know how to rein it in.
Yeah.
And by the time somebody else notices the problem, your job's on the line. Because
Right.
why wasn't he doing this? The manager I have now does both. You guys know some of the personal challenges I've got going on
Yeah.
with I'll call them my family, even though technically
Yeah.
they're not.
Yeah.
Also, last year, the health problem I had. Through it all, he's understood that. He's given me room to do what I needed to do. Now, in turn, I've produced for him. Out of the 1 year, the 26 teams we had, my team finished first. The next year, out of the 22 teams we had, my team finished first. This year, out of the 19 teams that we have, I'll probably finish second. So I've produced for him. So it's reciprocal.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's why he gives me the room he gives me. I've earned it. He's allowed me to do it. He's balanced my professional life with my personal life. And he truly acts like he doesn't act like he truly does care. For example, I gave him some bad news that I shared with both of you all about
Yeah.
this person recently. Just last week, I found out this news. And when I told him about it, he let me tell him. And then he said, well, I know you're going through all that, and that's important. But he also knows today's my birthday. He goes, we'll get back to that because that's important. Okay? But before we get into that, let's talk about something positive. What are you going to do for your birthday this weekend? And then it just led to the rest of the conversation.
And that's investing in you as a person, showing you that he cares
There's
enough to remember.
and I'll give you another quick example. I know I'm taking up all the time, but I'll make it really quick. I got a job offer from a previous boss that I worked for about a year and a half ago. And I told my boss now, I say, I'm going to be honest with you. I had dinner with, or breakfast with one of my old bosses, and they're opening up a new call center. And he says when he opens it up, he wants me to be the director. He wants me to run it. At the very least, the assistant director. He wants me to be a big part of management there. And my boss that I have now, he said, well, can I call you? Because I was telling him this on
okay.
company computer. He's like, well, can I call you? And my dumb self didn't realize the reason why he said that. And so when he called me, he goes, are you sure you want to tell them no? And at first I was hurt. I was like, well, you don't want me? I thought me telling you this, you'd be like, don't leave us, blah, blah. But you're like, are you sure you don't want to take it? He said, no, that's not it at all. He goes, our company's going through some changes. He goes, do you know if we're going to be here in 5 years? I don't. If that's a better offer for you with your skill set and your talent, I'm looking out for you. I'm not saying we're going away. I don't want to scare you.
Right.
But never.
But make the best decision.
Yeah,
for you.
make the best decision for yourself. Because if they have that much faith in you, I can't guarantee you in a year you're going to have that position here.
Yeah.
He said, you've earned it. You should have it. But I can't. But if they're offering up front and you trust them, you better think about it a little longer. And the mere fact that he did that told me again that he's invested in me.
Yeah.
And he wants me to do what's best for me. Do you think I'm gonna go out there and bust my tail for him every shift? You doggone right.
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Because just like I said with my agents earlier, I don't take phone calls, so their numbers are mine. Well, he doesn't manage agents, so my numbers are
Or
his.
his, yeah.
And so
Okay.
that's what I would say.
Very good.
I would say actually very much similar as my current boss. He's really. We have coffee every morning. I come into work every morning.
That's a cool relationship.
I come in, I'll check my email, answer any emails that need to be answered. If not, usually there's nothing in the inbox that's needing to be handled at the moment. So our employees get in about the time I do. So normally they're not hitting me up looking for some assistance. So I grab my coffee cup, stop by his office, and we go downstairs and get a cup of coffee, and we sit and we actually stand because we stand I laugh. It's we say hello to all. We're like the greeters to our company, and we stand there and wave to everybody as they walk in the door. But he wants to know what's going on with me, and I want to know what's going on with him and his life and everything. And we're close. We work very well together. He wants me to be successful. Because if I'm successful, he's successful. The company's successful. We're providing.
Right.
We are the IT department for this family, and so the more successful we are, the better we can support them. The more successful they're going to be in their IT needs. So he wants to make sure that I'm trained. I'm getting the training that I need. So he's like, okay, what is the training for the year? What are you trying to do? Where are you at? And so I appreciate that.
Right.
And so he's looking out for me. And hey, look, the way I look at it is this job could end tomorrow.
Yeah.
This training that he's trying to make sure that I'm getting, it's just going to enhance me as an employee.
Right.
But it also enhances me as a person for the next job that I do have.
Fair enough.
Because if I do, if this job went away,
where are you going to take what you're learning?
Exactly.
Yeah, you can still take that somewhere else.
I can take that somewhere else and be successful. So yeah, my current boss.
Okay. I don't even have a definitive answer to my own question because there's been a few. Y'all may think I'm saying this just because he's sitting here, but honestly, Talmadge is one of the best bosses I've ever
You're just
had.
saying that because he's sitting here.
That's what I'm thinking too.
Y'all can think that.
He's just trying to make up for not inviting me to
For
y'all's
not
draft
to
party.
the
You know
to
what?
the NFL draft party last year.
Probably so.
That's all it is.
It might be something to do with it. No, but you and a couple other people that if I were going to name names, you would know at that same place. One you talked about that was a big supporter of me, and then another one that I'll just say was one of the higher ranking at the place, and you know who I'm talking about, I'm sure. One thing that I appreciate about all three of you is that you treated me like a person, and you wanted to know. You saw the positives I had. Okay, Jared's going to ask a lot of questions. He's really thorough. He's not going to do everything conventionally the way everybody else does. Y'all knew that, but you also said, but what are the intangibles he brings? What are the things he does better than everybody else? Let me focus on that. Let me develop that. And you also, all three of you would hear me out. Some of the worst bosses I talked about a while ago, one thing that also bothered me, anytime if I asked too many questions or if I disagreed with something, I could ask them, well, why would we do this way? Or why, I want the reason behind the decision. There was never an explanation.
Yeah.
With you and the other two I'm talking about, all three of you would sit and listen. And even if we disagreed at the end of it, y'all would say some semblance of, those are good points. I hear everything that you're saying. We still have to do it this way, and here's why. And even if I disagreed, and you can speak to this, I never got mad about it. I'd say, okay, that's fair enough. At the end of the day, I report to you, not the other way around. And whether I like it or not, if I've understood it well enough, I'm still going to go, okay.
Well, plus, I give you credit for understanding, too, that again, one of the things I said in this conversation is one of our jobs is to disseminate information.
Right.
So I might give you information. It doesn't mean I agree with it either. But my job is to give
True.
information. And sometimes I would tell you that. And sometimes I wouldn't. Sometimes I would say, I don't agree with it either, but here's why we got to do it.
Right.
And this is what we're going to do, and this is the expectation, and this
is what we need
and then
to
sometimes
do.
I would say, no, I agree with it totally, Jared. I guess we disagree on this one, but here's why.
Yeah.
But we had that relationship where we could have that
We
conversation.
did, and we honestly we rarely disagreed, but
There were
even-
one or two times,
there were.
and when we do, it was just perspective. It wasn't that we completely disagreed. Like I remember one specific
Yes.
instance where I'm not going to say what happened, but you had documented on an account, and you documented in a way we didn't want you to document.
Right.
I explained it one way. Well, a peer of mine, they took a total different approach. Well, you can't do that. You can't do that. Here's
Yes.
why. I think you know what I'm talking about.
I know exactly the situation you're talking
So you
about.
even told me that it's like, okay, well now that you've explained it that way, I get it.
Right.
Whereas before,
But without the explanation, I was like, "What do you mean telling me not to do this, or we can't do this, or whatever?"
and in
'Cause
your
it just
defense,
didn't
the
make any
person that
sense.
explained it to you previously, not to say that I'm better than, but in that specific case, they didn't explain it well because they didn't understand it.
Right.
The reason they gave you wasn't even correct.
No,
It wasn't even accurate.
it wasn't. They the goal was like, "I'm going to reprimand you," but then when I was like, "But what does that mean?" They couldn't give me an answer.
And even one of the persons that you disliked, when she found out about it, she completely said, "I'm with you, Roger. I don't care if he says those words or not, but if he uses those words, he's got to be 100% accurate."
Yes,
And that was my issue. I was like, "There's no way you were 100% accurate here."
actually, I think I was, but that's been a
Well,
long
but
time
you
ago.
use like tic-tac-toe boards and stuff.
Well,
and I'm like,
well, two different things,
If,
but yeah,
if
yeah.
you're gonna use it,
No, and
do
yeah.
it. And
Yeah.
she was like, I agree with you. I don't care if he uses those words or not, but he's got to make sure it's exactly
Yes,
what
yes,
they said
yes.
because he's saying the customer said.
If you're putting in quotes,
And if
it's
one
gotta be in
syllable's
quotes.
off,
Yeah.
then.
And I can accept
Yeah.
that explanation. So even when we did disagree,
But the other super like, you can't be using this.
Right.
That wasn't the issue. You
that
can
was,
use
you're
it.
not making
I have
sense
no,
to
if
me.
that's what they say,
So
you can use it. Just
with-
make sure it's accurate.
With you and the other two that I would say are some of my best bosses, all of you would hear me out and give me like there was strong communication and strong respect on both sides. It's kind of the core of where I'm going. That's where I worked really well, and that's where you're going to get the best for me, and where I'm going to give you the most value is when we're communicating and respecting each other. If you're not doing that, I'm getting to
You
a point
lose
where I'm
in,
like,
I learned
I'll lose
early on with
interest.
you lose interest with a person very quickly. And I'm not even gonna say if you feel like you're disrespected, because the word disrespect today means so little. If you step on somebody's shoe when they're going into the club, why you disrespecting you? It's a totally different.
Yeah.
But with you, it's if you have respect for someone's perspective and they've taken the time to communicate it with you, and you trust their judgment, you're going to listen to them, agree or not.
Yes.
If you feel like they're trying to do some hocus pocus, I'll just tell them this.
Yeah.
But I really don't know what I'm talking about. You lose patience with that quickly, and you can tell. You're professional, but me knowing you like I know you, I
Yeah.
can tell right off. Like you could be on this side of the room, and I'm just watching you have hand motions and talking like he's already checked out on that conversation.
You're not wrong. Like if somebody's trying to swindle me with some foolishness, and I see because I usually will see through it pretty fast. I don't have time to be lied to. That's why I don't. I take it as somebody might be like, "Oh, I was just didn't need to tell me anything." You're really lying to my face. Just tell me that you can't give me an answer, or tell me that
You're saying you're
not
being
quite
diplomatic,
sure.
but let's
You're
not
lying
confuse
to
your
my
lying.
face because I can be diplomatic without lying. I do know the difference. So when somebody lies to me like that, you're right. I do lose interest pretty quick because you're not respecting me. So I don't have a lot of investment in what you're saying. So yeah, the best bosses I've had are the ones that agree or disagree, will listen to me, and sometimes even say, "That's a really good point I hadn't thought about. Let's maybe go with your idea because it does make more sense," or something along the lines of that, rather than just pull rank and give me some balderdash that clearly makes
Doesn't
no
add up.
sense. So, having unpacked all of that we have, how important do you think it is to have a job that you truly enjoy? I started the whole episode by saying I think so many people just tolerate or settle for where they've landed. How important do you guys think it is to have a job that you truly enjoy?
Let's be honest, if you work at a job you don't enjoy, you're just not going to produce. Now, there may be situations where you have to have this job, but you're not going to be 9 times out of 10. You're just not going to be the employee that they're needing because you're not putting 100% into it. I mean, I'll be honest. Last year, I worked for a company that bought the company I worked for at the point in time, I think 18 years. They came in and bought my company for 17 years. And I you know what? Look, I hated it, every bit of it. I did not enjoy it. I bucked the system. I did anything I could do that my director wanted done. I said, nope, not going to do it. I came home. I didn't care. But I've left that job, and I am in a much happier place because I would much rather, where I'm at right now, I'll go to bat, I'll die on that hill sort of thing attitude, where before I didn't care. I did the job. Yes, I did the job.
You went through the motions of doing
I went
the
through
job.
the motions is the best way to put it. I went the motions, but I didn't care. If you wanted to have a conversation, I didn't want to conversate with you. That was not going to happen because I didn't care. I hated that job, and I so disliked it in all of 23. I was miserable the entire time, and miserable for the first 3 months of the year.
Yeah.
Until I left that job. Until I was.
I remember you telling me on the
until
phone
I
when
am
you
where I
finally
am now.
changed.
Yeah. When I got to my job right now, the stress, anxiety, everything was gone. That 800-pound gorilla was off my back, and I cared.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say that you can't be productive.
Well, no, because it's possible to still be productive.
You can still be
but
productive. It's just
the investment's not there. It's
there
not
is
gonna go as
not.
far.
Yeah, exactly. There's not an investment there.
All right, Thomas, what do you think?
I think very similar. I would say that if you're not happy where you are, if you're a good employee and have good work ethic, you can still meet the expectation. The difference is you're not likely to exceed the expectation.
Yeah.
Because you're only looking to exceed the expectation when you're trying to show your worth.
Yeah.
And also you're invested to do more just because you like the job and you want to. Yeah. When those two things happen, you put yourself in position for raises and promotions. And I'm not saying that's your driver, but that's the positive impact.
It's kind of the output of the input you're giving.
Right.
And so if you're not happy on your job, you can still do it. But you won't enjoy it every day. It's more of a grind every day. When you've really met your stride and you're starting to master where you are and you enjoy it, the job becomes fun. And something else I've noticed too, you're more willing and able to share knowledge with others because you have a joy in doing it and you want them to feel that same joy.
You want other people to experience that same thing.
And you tend to look out avenues to share your knowledge when you're good at something. And when you're good at something, it means you usually enjoy it. If you don't enjoy it and you're not good at it, it's one of the things we've been talking about this entire conversation with some of the people we spoke about that weren't so good at their job in your opinion. You're not seeking out the reasons why when you explain it to somebody because you don't know the reasons yourself, and you're frustrated because you don't really know either. And so you just throw something out there. When they don't accept it, now you're ticked off at them, and you try to put it on them and say, well, they're being combative. No, it's really you because you're unhappy because you couldn't explain it. Maybe you couldn't explain it because you're not invested, and you never thought to ask that same question. When you are, you do. And so when you enjoy your job, not only is it better for you personally, but it's better for the employee because you're looking for ways to share knowledge and you're looking for ways to learn more. When you're just trying to do the job, you're not trying to learn more because you don't like the job you got. So why would you want to take on something else?
Right.
It changes everything.
Yeah.
And I'm glad we had this conversation because I enjoy the company that I work for very much right now. I can't say I don't. They've been very, very good to me in a lot of ways. And I've already said how much I enjoy my boss.
Yeah.
But sometimes I do have to examine, but are you in a rut? You've been doing this for so long. Do you still enjoy it? Some days the answer is yes. Some days the answer is no. And I've got to come to the decision of what's best for me and what's best for the company. Because again, it is a relationship.
Yeah.
And I guess I do like my job because I still care about that relationship. I want to give my best to them. And some days, if I'm not enjoying it, I don't. And that's not fair to them.
Right. And that's a very good and very responsible outlook. For me, it's paramount. I need to be, and everybody's different, but everything y'all said, I concurred. I need to be somewhere that I really enjoy, and I need to believe in the people I work with and the mission of the organization. Because if I just don't care enough, I get to a point where I ask myself, well, why are you here? We spend too much of our lives at work. When you look at the whole course of our lives, we spend way too many hours of our lives at a job.
Yeah.
You can make $1 anywhere. It's never, to me, I mean, yeah, you got to have a certain amount of money to pay your bills, but I'd rather be somewhere where I'm happy and where I feel like I'm really making a difference. And I tell people sometimes, for some people, it's enough just to make a living. I need to feel like I'm making a difference. Because if I'm not, I need to be somewhere where I can. Otherwise, I'm wasting my time and wasting the organization's time. Except for I'm not making a difference. I'm not providing the value that maybe that company needs. So if this just isn't working, if I'm not motivated enough or whatever, I need to find somewhere that I can make that type of difference and get out of the way of maybe somebody else that company would rather have.
Fair.
That's kind of the way I see that as well.
And real quickly, I want to say that's one of the many things that I admire about you, because a lot of people say that, but you've always meant that. For the years I've known you, when you were struggling at the place that we were talking about, and not because of your performance, but because you were struggling with some of these same thoughts.
Right.
The few times we would talk, 'cause we weren't talking a lot then, but we still kept in touch.
Yeah.
I could tell off of one or two conversations that you were really struggling with that because
Yeah.
you just weren't happy. I'm proud of you because you have the guts to make the change. There's people in that building right now, not the same one I was in because they've moved.
Right.
But in
Building
that
I was last in.
But there's people in that building right now that don't have the guts you have. And they don't like where they are, and they don't like the outcome, and they don't like their life or that aspect of their life because of it, but they're still going to go there every day. And we know it's true.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
No, we do, and that encompasses a pretty large percentage of the population. So my final question, and we all have kind of an idea, but I still want to just get this: if you could make a living doing literally anything, what would that be?
Wow. I've never thought of that. Pie in the sky dream, and I don't have the experience or the background to do it. But
Okay.
just what I guess this is more of it, it's not quite your question. What I have always wanted to do, but didn't follow that path to do it.
Okay.
But still think I have a natural skill to at least explore it.
Okay.
Is something in you guys' industry, direction.
Okay.
Because I've wanted to be an actor early on in my life, but then as time went on, I was like, that's not really where I feel my passion. I want
Yeah.
to put this thing together.
Okay.
I want somebody else to, here's the roadmap, now you drive it. And so that's more of a pie in the sky dream.
Okay.
But that's something that if you ask me what I regretted doing and wish I could do, it would
Yeah.
be that.
Okay. I mean, that's a valid answer, valid response.
Well, you know my answer, because we wouldn't be talking about the things that we talk about as far as production. But
Right.
you know, I really regret walking away from radio, television, film. And if I'd have known back then that I could do my own films, even if no one ever bought into them or even decided that they were worth putting anything into,
Yeah.
I still love doing it.
Yeah.
We were out filming 3 weeks
Few
ago,
weeks
2 weeks ago. I had more fun. I was exhausted. I had no sleep the night before because we slept in a trailer that had no AC, and it was too warm outside. And our lead actor slept on a trailer in the outside just to get some sleep. I was miserable, but you know what? I had more fun that day.
Yeah.
And by the time I got home, I could have slept for the next 48 hours because I was exhausted. But that was so much fun. So if there was anything I could do, production work, whether I was a producer, director, I was probably not the very best director, probably wasn't even halfway good director for what I did on the set that Saturday. But I had an absolute ball working with you and our crew. So that would be what it would be
Okay.
to do films.
Well, I mean, similar answer, I guess, for all of us. That for me, honestly, yes, it's that. But I won't even take the time with there's so many other goals and passions that have come along over the years for
okay.
me.
It's okay. You can say it. You want to be the quarterback of the New York Giants, don't you?
I do right now, but that's just one of my many things.
Hey, I didn't know what I was saying.
He's gonna blame it on the. I mean, yeah, really, I don't know.
I didn't know what I was saying.
Yeah, I mean, writing, directing,
Yeah.
producing films is one of the things, and that for a long time that was my main focus. And then just a few years ago, I was praying and I felt God telling me, like, you're on the right path with that, but Jared, I want you to expand your mind. I've blessed you with many gifts. Those are some of them. Don't be afraid to explore. Don't be afraid to think you're confined to that. So after that is when I actually started writing some books, and I became more interested in looking for more mentoring opportunities, like at my jobs. Mm-hmm. And I started, and I've had several people over the years say to me, "Why aren't you making a living as a motivational speaker?" Like, I've had people at different jobs say, "Why are you working here? How are you not making a living doing motivational speaking?" So that's something else I've become very interested in, even though I haven't made the money doing it yet. But after I prayed and I felt God telling me, like, don't think it's just acting, writing, directing. Yes, you're on the right track pursuing that. But Jared, explore. Like, don't be afraid to ask me and to explore what else there is, because there's other ways I can use you. You just have to discover it, basically. So, having said that, I do have some other interests. I don't want to take any more time, because if I go into everything that I feel like that God could use me to accomplish and that He's communicated to me in the past few years, trust me, we'll be here I can like double the length of this episode, and I'm not really interested in doing that. But anyway, thank you guys. I've thoroughly enjoyed this, and
You're welcome.
For everybody watching, if you love what you do for a living, awesome. Congratulations. You found something that most people don't.
Ever do, yeah.
If you don't like where you are, you're not sure, you just got kind of stuck doing what you're doing, don't be afraid to step out and find something else. Don't be afraid to pursue something you actually love. Is there risk involved? Sometimes, yeah. Is there uncertainty involved? Yeah. Are most of us scared of the unknown? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll say yeah on that one myself.
Yeah, most of us are. But if you love something, is it not worth it? Is it worth going to a job every day that doesn't fulfill you and where you're not happy? Sometimes you might get to the point where I said a while ago, like me, what am I doing here if I'm not fulfilled, if I'm not making a difference? If that's how you're feeling, I hope this will help you explore some different avenues maybe that you just haven't explored before. So thank you all so much for joining us. If you liked the episode, please show that by clicking the like button. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the channel. It will really help me to be able to bring you more of this type of content and many other types of content, whether it's top 10 sports lists or discussing Bruce Lee or whatever happens across my mind. So for Chris Black, for Talman's Roger Varnado III, I am Jared Johnson, the Jared J. Thanks for stopping by. Hope y'all have a great week, and hope I see you again real soon.